The air in Kensington Palace was always stillest in the hours just before dawn. On this particular morning in November 1997, it was the only time Diana's staff would allow her private secretary, Patrick, a moment of solitude to complete the agonizing task, cataloging the princess's personal effects. Patrick had been loyal, fiercely so, a man whose life was defined by discretion and unwavering service to the crown. Now, every velvet-lined box, every faded photograph, felt like an open wound, a constant reminder of the dazzling spirit they had lost. He was meticulously working through a large mahogany chest containing items Diana had specifically designated for the future use of my sons when they are ready. He had moved past childhood drawings and pressed flowers, past Queen Victoria's sapphire brooch, when his hand brushed against something rough tucked deep beneath a stack of worn riding gloves. It was an envelope. Thick, cream-colored, and sealed with a heavy wax-like blob that felt foreign to the touch. The seal was unbroken. On the front, written in a teenage boy's hasty, familiar hand, were 2 words. For Mum. Patrick's breath hitched. A wave of cold dread washed over him, far colder than the November air. He knew that handwriting. He had seen P. Williams' script 1,000 times on birthday cards and school notes. But this was different. This was sealed. This was hidden. He looked around the silent room, the morning light just beginning to bleed through the grand windows, casting long, accusing shadows. Duty, his entire life's training, told him to catalog it immediately, call the palace lawyers, and surrender the item to the estate. It is the property of the crown, Patrick. You know the rules. The silent, rigid voice of the firm whispered in his ear. But loyalty, a far deeper, more dangerous code of conduct forged in his years serving Diana, demanded he protect his princess one last time. He recognized the paper. It was the bespoke, expensive stationery William had used at Eton. But the seal? It wasn't the royal crest. It was a crude, almost childish drawing pressed into the wax. A bird in flight, breaking free of a cage. The image alone was a seismic shock. This was a message not from a prince, but from a captive soul. Patrick carefully slipped the envelope into his own pocket. The official logbook would simply read, 1 pair of leather riding gloves. The silence of the palace swallowed his small, profound act of treason. For days, the envelope burned a hole in Patrick's uniform. He couldn't open it. He couldn't surrender it. He was a guardian of a truth he didn't yet know, a truth he suspected could shatter the fragile peace that had settled over the royal houses since the tragedy. He was haunted by the knowledge that this letter represented the last, most private communication between mother and son. Diana, in her final months, had been consumed by the thought of freedom. She had been researching properties in Malibu, looking at international schools, dreaming of a life where her sons could visit without the constant surveillance of the firm. Patrick knew all of this because he had been the one making the discreet inquiries, often receiving coded instructions late at night. Did William know? Was he a part of her final flight? The possibility was terrifying. If this letter details an abdication, Patrick thought, his stomach churning, it is a secret powerful enough to destabilize the entire Windsor dynasty, a political earthquake the monarchy could never recover from. The potential scandal was immense. If this letter contained a prince's stated intention to abandon his destiny, his throne, it wasn't just a letter, it was the ultimate weapon against the stability of the monarchy. Charles, now King Charles III in this future, would be devastated. The Queen, whose entire existence was predicated on duty, tradition, and stability, would be irreparably betrayed by her heir. The weight of the world, or at least the weight of the Commonwealth, rested on Patrick's shaky hands. He knew he had to read it, if only to prepare the necessary fire suppression. Alone in his small private office late one evening, the ticking of the grandfather clock deafeningly loud, Patrick finally found the privacy to unseal the thick, heavy envelope. He didn't use a letter opener. He used his bare hands, carefully tearing the wax seal, that tiny rebellious bird, and pulling out the folded sheets of paper. He had to know the extent of the disaster he was about to contain. The letter was dated August 1997, just weeks before the accident. It was long, it was raw. It was written not with the measured reserve of a future king, but the furious, aching honesty of a 17-year-old boy consumed by his circumstances. The first paragraph was an explosion of grief and confusion over his parents' impending divorce, his mother's isolation, and the suffocating environment of the palace. William confessed that he felt like a pawn, moved on a chessboard by forces he couldn't control. "I feel like I'm wearing a costume that doesn't fit," he wrote, "and they call me mad for wanting to take it off. They keep telling me to stop being emotional, to be strong like Dad. But, Mum, being strong here means being cold. I can't do it." The words hung in the air, heavy with the weight of the crown he was born to inherit. William, the future King of England, was confessing to his mother that he felt his sanity slipping under the relentless pressure of his duty. The emotional rehook was undeniable. William had used Diana's own language, the word mad, the feeling of suffocating paranoia, mirroring the exact psychological abuse his mother had endured. William, too, was feeling the crushing weight of institutional gaslighting. He continued, detail by devastating detail, recounting moments when he had subtly tried to rebel, small acts of defiance like choosing a different school subject, or protesting a mandatory royal event, only to be immediately and severely corrected by palace advisors. He described his father, Charles, as distant, constantly distracted by Camilla, and seemingly indifferent to William's own fears and desires. The letter was a timeline of a prince's slow-motion breakdown, meticulously documented by his own hand. He detailed a particularly tense argument with a senior courtier who had explicitly told William that his emotional attachment to Diana was a weakness that must be excised for the good of the realm. The courtier had then threatened, "You are here to serve, Prince William. Your feelings are irrelevant. If you continue this rebellion, we will ensure your university choices are severely restricted. You must choose the crown over sentiment." But the true bombshell was tucked into the middle of the third page. It wasn't just a lament, it was a proposition. William wrote about a conversation he'd had with Diana over the summer, a fleeting, hopeful discussion about her potential move. "Mum, you said you might go to America. You said you might finally be free. If you go, I need you to know, I will follow you. I can't live this life if you aren't here to anchor me. I don't want the crown. I want to be us. I want a proper life." The words were a direct refutation of his entire destiny, written in desperation. He didn't just want to leave. He had a meticulously laid out, naive, yet shockingly specific escape plan. It involved using his 18th birthday to establish control over his own affairs, taking a gap year, staging a minor illness to avoid public commitments, arranging a quiet transfer to an American university under a pseudonym, and a promise to sign a statutory declaration renouncing his place in the line of succession the moment he turned 21. He named the exact month, the American state, Wyoming of all places, and even a contact name, a trusted American diplomat Diana had befriended, the same diplomat Patrick had been warned to avoid. This wasn't teenage angst. It was a blueprint for abdication, co-signed by the heir apparent's desperation and fueled by his mother's dreams of freedom. Patrick read the name of the American diplomat, a man Charles's staff had spent years trying to neutralize. Now it made sense. Diana and William were planning a quiet revolution, a secret pact that would have cleaved the British monarchy in two. William, the future king, was begging his mother to help him escape the destiny that was suffocating him. He even detailed the specific financial arrangements he believed he could access from his mother's inheritance to ensure he would never be financially dependent on the royal purse again. He calculated the exact sum he would need to start a new, private life, itemizing the costs with meticulous teenage optimism. He wrote, "I won't be their puppet, Mum. I will be free, and I will be with you. We can finally be a real family away from the cameras and the cold stares." This simple statement was the most profound act of treason against the institution Patrick had ever witnessed, but the final pages contained an even darker revelation. William detailed the immense pressure being put on him by the senior royals and their staff to distance himself from Diana. He described subtle manipulations, being told that his mother was unstable, that she was damaging the reputation of the crown, and that it was William's duty to protect the family by choosing his father's side. "They want me to hate you, Mum," he wrote, the ink slightly blurred on the page, suggesting tears. "They think I'm too young to see their game, but I know they are turning me into a weapon against you. They are poisoning me against the one person who ever made me feel normal." This chilling insight proved that William was fully aware of the psychological warfare being waged on his mother, and by extension, on himself. He mentioned specific gifts being given to him by Charles's staff immediately after arguments with Diana, designed to create a sense of obligation and loyalty to his father's side, subtle bribes he now saw through. He explained why the letter was sealed and hidden. He hadn't sent it because his father's security detail, specifically the new protection officer assigned by Charles, had made it clear that all private correspondence was being reviewed. "I can't risk them finding this, Mum," he wrote. "They would lock me away forever." William feared that if this letter, his declaration of independence, fell into Charles's hands, they would immediately limit his contact with Diana. So, he had hidden it, intending to give it to her during a private, unsupervised visit that never came. The boy had been forced to hide his heart from the very system he was meant to inherit. Diana never knew the depth of his despair, or the incredible sacrifice he was willing to make for her. Patrick knew the implications were catastrophic. If this letter became public, it would not only validate every claim Diana had ever made about the palace's coldness, but, more dangerously, it would permanently destabilize the future king's legitimacy. I have to choose the stability of the realm over the solace of a boy, Patrick decided, the realization a bitter pill that tasted of betrayal. Patrick had to make a choice: protect the monarchy or honor the trust of the late princess and her grieving son. The dilemma was agonizing. If he showed William the truth, the pain would be immense, but the validation of his mother's love would be eternal. If he hid it, he would condemn the boy to a life he hated but save the realm from chaos. He chose the latter. He decided that Prince William, now Prince of Wales, deserved to know that his mother had received his farewell, albeit posthumously, but not the devastating blueprint for destruction. The letter was too risky to simply hand over. It needed a counterplan, a controlled narrative. Patrick spent the next few weeks forging a careful replica of the letter. This was not a simple task. It required mimicking the paper's aging, the ink's bleed, and the teenage scrawl. He used special archival paper sourced from a trusted dealer and painstakingly recreated the wax seal with a slightly different bird stamp to ensure the original's uniqueness was preserved. He painstakingly copied William's handwriting, replicating the desperate tone, but strategically omitting the most dangerous sections: the full escape plan, the diplomat's name, the abdication pledge, and the direct accusations against Charles. The original, the true blueprint for abdication, he carefully sealed in a lead-lined safe he kept in a private bank vault, attaching a note: in the event of a national crisis, and only then, the king's heart. The forged copy, altered to appear as a highly emotional but ultimately vague cry for help and a statement of enduring love, was subtly planted back into the mahogany chest. Months later, Patrick presented the catalog to William. The young prince was now a student at St. Andrews, beginning the long process of accepting his fate. He was emotionally distant, polite, but clearly pained by the inventory of loss. When he finally reached the writing gloves and found the envelope, his stoic facade cracked. He recognized the paper, the seal, the handwriting. He took it to his private rooms. The next day, William called Patrick, his voice raw with emotion. "Patrick," he choked out, why didn't I send it? Did she know I felt this way? Did she know I loved her enough to follow her?" Patrick feigned ignorance, assuring the prince that his mother had cherished him, and surely would have understood. William believed the copy. He accepted the vague, emotional farewell as the final communication with his mother. The relief was immediate. He saw the letter as a testament to their unbreakable bond, a necessary release of adolescent frustration, but nothing more. The forgery had worked. The danger was averted. The true escape plan was buried, deemed too dangerous for the heir. Patrick watched as the prince, reassured by the letter's edited contents, slowly began to embrace his destiny, accepting the crown's constraints. William became the prince they wanted him to be: dutiful, resilient, reserved. He found a wife, raised children, and stepped into his role with an admirable sense of commitment. He carried the grief of his mother, but he also carried the weight of the crown, a weight the real hidden letter proved he never wanted. Patrick lived the rest of his life knowing the true price of the monarchy's stability, the suppression of its future king's deepest desire for freedom. Every time Patrick saw William smile in public, every time he saw him execute a perfect royal wave, he felt a sharp stab of guilt. He had protected the institution, but he had silenced the boy, ensuring the continuation of a destiny William had explicitly rejected. The knowledge never left him. The true document, the one that proved the future King of England was ready to sacrifice his throne for a normal life with his mother, still sat in the lead-lined vault. It was the greatest act of hidden loyalty and betrayal ever committed by a member of the princess's staff. The royal family was safe, but the man on the throne was living a life he had once desperately planned to flee. And Patrick, the former secretary, was the only one in the world who knew the king's true heart was still sealed away, under a layer of lead, waiting for the day the cage might break. The story of Princess Diana was not just about her own escape. It was about the escape she almost made possible for her son. And the monarchy's greatest fear wasn't Diana. It was the heir who never wanted to wear the crown. And that fear was still locked away, waiting to rewrite history, a time bomb ticking beneath the palace, set to go off if the weight of the crown ever became too much for the king to bear.